So I have been smoking marijuana probably since I was 20 years old, 19 or 20. I got into it actually kind of reluctantly. I grew up in a Christian Midwestern kind of environment, and marijuana was one of those kind of gateway drugs that people talked about as being very dangerous and evil. So when I got into it, I had to do a lot of personal research and kind of decide that it was right for me before I started smoking it. It was cool though. It was really important for my life. I always think about smoking marijuana as something which you need to do at the end of the day after a long day of work. And I usually think about it as pretty much it's like a pre-activity. It's something I want to do before I actually work out, before I'm going to work. And if I can, I actually really prefer to be able to have it, as a breakfast prior to lunches. We'll come back to that part. So it's evolved for me over a few years because so I probably smoked 5 or 6 years now, and when I first started consuming marijuana, it was through basically small means, and I would smoke joints. But now I prefer to dab because I found that with my tolerance level being where it is, and how much I was spending on weed, and how much time I was really spending on weed, I found that it was more helpful to just buy dabs. So dabs are my way to go. I have a couple rigs that I use too. I have a small silicone rig that I use in the car. I have a glass rig that I use at home, and then I have a larger glass rig with a bubbler that I use when friends are around, friends and family. So a couple different things to choose from. And I usually buy grams of dabs, between 1 and 5 grams of dabs at a time, I'd say, for a week. Marijuana legalization, it's a big topic, and one of the things that's controversial about it is, people are saying that with the legalization there's a lot more control over it, meaning the taxes are a lot higher and meaning there's a lot more regulation involved. Some people see that as a bad thing. I actually kind of see it as a bad thing. I've avoided a lot of the recreational facilities so far in Los Angeles just because I basically think that the taxes that are on them, 30% taxes, is too high. They must be working on music. That's really cool. Yes, I think I will always smoke marijuana. Uh, it's definitely a personal decision for me in terms of why I want to smoke it. And, there's a big debate around medical versus recreational marijuana. And for me, it is a medical thing. It is something that it definitely helps me with a lot of things. Um, I'm definitely an enthusiast of fitness. I'm into healthy lifestyles, partially living in California, partially having a best friend who is really into fitness and healthy living, but also just out of a personal kind of interest in my own healthy living. I am somebody who typically is really depressed just by nature, and in seeking that out, I've found out that healthy living is is maintained by having the right balance of diet, of sleep, and of, proper nutrients, taking care of your brain and having the proper balance. And so for me, marijuana is one of the things that actually helps me level out my brain to the way that I need it to be. I deal with a very severe depression. I deal with a loss of appetite. I deal with sleeplessness and a lot of the other things, the other common kinds of things that, marijuana users will jump to because of legalization and being able to get their recs and stuff. But I actually do believe that I will always smoke marijuana because of that. So before I started smoking marijuana, one of the things that I think was the most damaging was that I accepted a lot of the stigmas that people believed about it. I believed that people who smoked marijuana were lazy. I believed that I had an idea of people who, I don't want to insult anybody directly, but there was a stigma and an image around people who smoked marijuana, and I associated this negative image with that. So for me, it was really damaging because I had to unlearn all of that when I actually got into marijuana. And that's the thing that I find that I talk to people the most about. I'll talk to them in the workplace, or I'll talk to them in whatever setting, in the gym or whatever. And they don't want to smoke marijuana in those environments because they think it inhibits them from being able to do certain things. Like, for example, like I said, at work, I'll talk to people, and people don't want to smoke marijuana at work because they think that it's going to inhibit their ability to do their jobs. Most people, though, hate their jobs. Most people don't actually pay attention and are not focused on their jobs. Most people aren't doing what they love to be doing. If you're actually doing what you love to be doing, you're going to be engaged in it. You're going to be focused on it. But for most of us that are going through kind of autopilot everyday motions, it's monotonous. And something like marijuana could actually help us in those times because we wouldn't focus so much on the stresses that we're, feeling, or the distraction, or personally for me it's boredom because I want to be doing something else. So I think having to unlearn all of that and go back and find out, no, those are the times that you should be smoking, I think is really hard for people. Once they start smoking, it's almost like a stage where they have to, they smoke at night, and then maybe they smoke in the mornings, or they smoke before meals, or they smoke when their friends are over. But it really has to be a personal thing. It's got to go beyond that. I do think there's a scientific answer to that, and I don't necessarily know if I have the research to be able to speak onto it. I think we should be talking to people about marijuana, though, at a very young age. I definitely don't know that I should have been smoking it at a very young age because I think that I had a lot of joy and happiness and kind of creativity in being young that I was very excited to have. But I think having a conversation about it would have been really important for me. I found out about it a lot later on than I would have wanted to, and I found out that a lot of my family members were very accepting of it and thought it was okay and normal. And that was kind of weird for me too, growing up thinking that it was so bad, and then finding out that everybody was, accepting. I think more people are going to smoke, and I think the industry is going to change in the better in the near future by marketing to people more properly. For example, I think a lot of the fitness community is going to start engaging in edibles, muscle relaxers. When you smoke, it relaxes the muscles and actually allows you to engage in the pose a little deeper. And you're not so focused on when it's going to be done. You're not thinking of other things. You're able to be present. So I think that in the near future, people are going to start the industry is going to start marketing to people in ways that actually engage their interests. Instead of marketing marijuana as the cliche stoner thing, where you smoke and you sit on the couch and you watch movies, play video games, eat chips. I think there's a way to smoke and be active, or if you have the munchies, I think there's a way to smoke and eat the right stuff. Let your munchies actually help you. Yes, I am a medical user of marijuana. I consume it on an extremely regular basis for a lot of different things. As I mentioned earlier, I struggle with low appetite. So very frequently I find that I'm not hungry and can go a very, very long period of time without eating. And it's a mental thing because my body actually obviously needs to be eating. But I also deal with other symptoms where I smoke marijuana on a very regular basis. I think marijuana has always been a movement or a religious, cultish kind of thing in some way or another, especially since the 50s and 60s. I think that there was a large movement that started then, especially in psychedelics too, that started, and people started focusing on it as a religious thing and as a spiritual thing, and I think that that's been really good. But I think that one of the things that's a problem is when we think right now, okay, now we're in the movement, now this is really happening, or it's just starting. When really there are people who are a lot older than us who have been involved in this for a long time. A long time. So I think it has always been somewhat of a movement. I think it's becoming more accepted now. It's becoming more regulated, obviously by the government. But I think that there are still activists who are using it to kind of help people, help open their eyes, realize the culture is not good for them, break them from boundaries, obstacles, personal insecurities, personal issues that you deal with that are setbacks. In that way, it's definitely a movement. It's like the video of the guy dancing crazy, and then all of a sudden, more dancers join in, and then more dancers join in. When you see somebody who is living a free life with joy, helping others, growing, it's inspiring. And so I think marijuana is a movement in that way. The feeling that I have when I first smoke, whether it's in the morning or it's been several hours or whatever it is, the feeling that first sets on, the initial thing, is almost like a closing of my vision. If you've ever stood up very suddenly and the blood goes out of your head and your vision tunnels in, it's a bit of the feeling after you first take your breath. Occasionally there's a couple seconds of coughing, of catching your breath. Immediately after that, though, I feel a relaxing of the muscles, usually in my arms and in my legs and in the top of my feet. I carry a lot of stress in my feet. And I immediately feel those muscles begin to relax. I also feel the muscles in my shoulder begin to relax. And I feel my thoughts become a little bit freer and lighter. Sometimes the nagging thoughts that I feel, maybe there's a bird chirping outside my window constantly and it's annoying me, or whatever it is, those feelings begin to slip away. Generally, my senses are raised. I feel a higher sense of smell, a higher sense of taste, a higher sensitivity to touch, and a deeper connectedness to my thoughts. One thing that I find very interesting about people is that they don't have an ability to connect to their thoughts. I actually had a conversation where I was learning about a study of a group of people who were sitting in a room and were basically asked to sit alone for 10 minutes and do nothing in a chair. And they were connected to basically like an electric device which would shock them at a slightly higher rate every time. And what they were allowed to do was if they became bored or couldn't deal with sitting alone, they could shock themselves in order to kind of deal with the boredom. Almost all of the patients would shock themselves, even to the point of severe pain during this trial. Just because they didn't want to sit alone for 10 minutes. Be alone with their thoughts. And this is an issue that I think so many people deal with. And one of the things that not even just marijuana has helped me with, but meditation has helped me with, is the ability to just sit with my thoughts. Be aware of what it is that I'm thinking or feeling. So pairing marijuana with meditation, I've actually been able to use those two things and really just sit for an extended period of time, 10 minutes, alone, doing nothing. I find that to be a very healing process, and I've also heard research on meditation that it extends your life and your time, so the benefits of combining these things are obvious, I think.